Here with us now, right here on the set of Morning Joe, senior editor at Slate.com and contributing writer for the New York Times, Emily Bazelon. Did I say it right then?
Yes,
did I get
you did.
Oh,
Thank you.
Gosh. Her extensive interview with Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg can be found in the new issue of the New York Times Magazine. And in it, Justice Ginsburg says this about the Sotomayor nomination fight, quote, "There are some people in Congress who would criticize severely anyone President Obama nominated. They'll seize on any handle. One is that she's a woman. Another is that she made the remark about Latina women. And I thought it was ridiculous for them to make a big deal out of that. Think of how many times you've said something that you didn't get out quite right. I can think of something I said recently, and you would edit your statement if you could. Yes, women bring a different life experience to the table. All of our differences make the conference better." And you've spoken extensively with Justice Ginsburg about the importance of another woman, at least another woman, being on the court. Tell us more about why she feels strongly about that.
Well, I think one of the things she said was it just doesn't look right in the year 2009 to have only one woman, and that she is very ready to no longer be the lone woman around the place, as she has been since Justice O'Connor retired 3 years ago.
Carlos Watson?
Emily, what, if anything, you had extensive access to her, as I understand you guys actually traded letters back and forth, good old-fashioned letters. Did anything surprise you? And if so, what surprised you the most about your exchanges with her?
She's a very warm person, which I don't think necessarily comes across. I mean, part of the milieu of Supreme Court justices is to seem very Olympian and austere. But in person, she was friendly and extremely kind to me.
In fact, I was taken aback. She was really open with you. She talked about affirmative action in her own case at Columbia Law School and the opportunity to get appointed, etc. Did she say at this point that she's changed her mind since she's been on the court on any of the major policy issues?
So I think she came into the court with this very strong record of litigating for women's rights and seeing discrimination law in this clear way, and that she's really on the court carried through those same principles.
But did she say enough has been done, particularly as it relates to reproductive rights? Was there more in her mind that the court needs to do, particularly in the Roberts Alito era?
She does see Roe versus Wade as not necessarily having been decided on the best grounds, and I think in the future would like to see a kind of sex equality basis for that ruling.
One of the reasons we find interviews like yours so interesting and the hearings today so interesting is even though this is a co-equal branch, these are pretty mysterious people. Sure. Does Justice Ginsburg feel like there should be more openness? Is that part of why she talked to you, to make a little bit more transparency come to the high court?
Well, I think she certainly did that by giving this interview. And in the past year, she has talked in other more academic or kind of lawyerly settings. So I think she's finding her voice to some degree in that regard.
Now, Justice Ginsburg is the second eldest member of the court, I think, behind Justice Stevens. Is there any talk, and was she open with you about considerations for retiring? Justice Souter obviously retired fairly young, right? He retired in his 60s, not what we normally see. Did she talk about that question at all?
She is 76. She was treated for cancer this winter, but she seemed very vigorous. And I think to the contrary, my sense was that she's very energetic. She ended the interview by telling me she was going off to her 7 o'clock personal training session and, was very open about wanting to be in shape. And I got the feeling that that she's healthy.
You asked in this interview, which is fascinating, on whether or not she thought that Sotomayor was being bullied on some of the issues that were raised when she was nominated. Give me a sense. I'm reading her answer. It's lengthy, but she actually had some pretty strong opinions about how ridiculous she felt some of these attacks were.
Right. I mean, part of it is the quote you read about this idea that Sotomayor, in talking about Latino women being judges, was really talking about how everyone brings a different experience to the court. It's not just if you're a woman or if you're a minority. That's true for all the justices. And I think then also that she wanted to make clear that that everyone could, have this kind of input.
What did she say, if anything, Emily, about Justice Roberts and his role now as Chief Justice? Has that changed the court significantly in her mind, even the way in which it's run versus Chief Justice Rehnquist?
Well, she talked with great fondness about the former Chief Justice Rehnquist, with whom she had a very close relationship. And then, in general, she talked with warmth about her male colleagues. But to go back to your question before, she also mentioned that Justice Scalia and Justice Breyer are very hard, aggressive questioners. And so this notion that Sotomayor is more so didn't really make sense to her. And she said Sotomayor will hold her own on the court.
All right, looking at this interview and Emily's work here, Pat Buchanan, I have an overall politics question for you. If the Republicans, if they go after her, if they find, I guess, a spot where she is weak, are they risking perhaps alienating certain groups at this point at a time that the Republicans don't really need to? Pat, are you there? Did we
I'm here. I'm here. Can you hear?
Well, yeah, I'm asking you in terms of the hearings that we're looking at. What are the risks for the Republicans as they sort of try and go after this?
Actually, the risks are not there on that side. The real problem for Republicans, quite frankly, is timidity, that they don't stand up for their principles. They voted for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. 96 senators voted for her. The point is, what Republicans and conservatives want their senators to do is stand up on this issue of reverse discrimination, the New Haven case, these other things where it seems clear that Sotomayor will really violate, if you will, the civil rights laws, discriminate against white males if it advances things like diversity and more Hispanics, etc. And they want their people to fight on this. The real danger for Republicans is excessive timidity.
Pat, should they vote no? Should Republicans vote no on her based on what we know already?
Well, based on what I know, I would not vote for her. From what I've seen, I could be persuaded if some of her answers came through. But based on her record, I wouldn't vote for her because I think she's a judicial activist. I think she believes that judges ought to make law. I think she says that's where the power is. And when she says, that Latina women, wise Latina women, will make better decisions than white males, that word better, it's not that she just comes, she's a different background. That word better, if someone said white males will make better decisions than Latina females, they would never be approved.
Mika, I tell you the one to watch is John McCain and how he votes. Remember, he's up for re-election next year. He's in a state that has a heavy Latino population. Watch him. I think it's very interesting. And if he votes for Sotomayor, I think that says a lot about where Republican politics are going.
Emily.
I just don't think that Sotomayor's record matches the notion that she's an activist. She has voted against the plaintiff in the vast majority of discrimination cases that have come before her, because that's where the law goes. In criminal cases, the vast majority of the time she's voted with her Republican colleagues. So, I feel like this notion based on this one line in a speech that she has given has really been blown up substantially.
Did she not say that the vote should be extended to felons in prisons, because denying the vote to felons in prisons has a disparate impact because more Hispanics and more African Americans are in prisons? I mean, that's judicial activism, wild judicial activism, if that is exactly what happened, and others have written and said it is.
Emily?
Well, that case was decided on equal protection grounds, and you're right, she did take the stance that New York's law is unconstitutional, but I think that, there are other judges who have taken that view. It's not out of the mainstream.
Okay, we'll leave it there for now.
Mainstream?
Oh, boy. All right, Pat, hang in there.
It's out of my mainstream.
Pat has a different mainstream. Is it the real mainstream? Or rural America mainstream? What mainstream are you talking about, Pat?
Middle America. Look, affirmative action's been defeated in California, in the state of Washington, in Michigan. Every time it's put on the ballot, they take it down.
Yeah.
And so this is, I think this is going to be the real thing they're going to ask her about.
Right, but that affirmative action ruling, before the Supreme Court ruled and reversed the panel opinion that Sotomayor was part of, she was really following prior precedent, the prior rulings, particularly in the Second Circuit. They gave her some amount of wiggle room, but not that much. She was not, going out there in some unexpected, strange way.
All right, we're gonna watch the hearing starting at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. Pat, hang in there. Emily Bazelon, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it. Great article, great interview.
Thank you.